The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Tuesdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. Plenty to get into with the news of the day, with Nebraska adding quarterback coach Glenn Thomas. Mitch Sherman had that for you from The Athletic around 11:40. We'll talk with Mitch here in about 15 minutes, get caught up with him, his reaction, his thoughts. We'll get your thoughts as well, 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. Always welcome in the stream, and check us out via video, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Can follow along there. Find Elijah on Twitter at Herbalessence, at Schmidt_radio for me. We'll get our starting five, our roll call in a moment. In hour two, we'll spend time, get some Nebraska flavor with longtime Buffalo Bills defensive end Chris Kelsay. Standout black shirt, his take on the Bills, his take on the Big Red. Matt Schick of ESPN going to be with us in hour two as well. So room for you in hour one. Always room via email or the phone lines, or also in the stream. Our starting five, our first five in. Chuck checks in from Denver.
I believe that's a first time in for Chuck.
Chuck, welcome. Thanks for checking in with us here on the stream with Hail Varsity YouTube. NU Grandpa, greetings all. Brandon says hello. Andrew in at number 4. Jeff in at 5. And Tuck just sneaks in at 6. And Bob in at 7. So there we have it. So more room for you, the more the merrier in the stream. And I think there's a huge sigh from a lot of Nebraska fans. Good write-up by, again, Mitch Sherman with that intel on Glenn Thomas. But Elijah, as we get into this, you knew something had to change for Nebraska at the quarterback spot. You need to go get talent. Every year you go get talent at all spots. And Nebraska landed a monster talent in Dylan Raiola, Danny Kaelin. And then you have, of course, Heinrich Harburg that's still on the roster, and there's still room for him to grow and improve. So, okay, you've got your two new quarterbacks in this recruiting class. You have the guy that won you 5 games last year, gutting out a performance at quarterback with not a lot of development paid to him until really the Rhule staff got here. Now, what do you do to enhance that offense? Well, you get a good offensive line. You keep grooming that. You get a running back room that's good. You find some wideouts, and then your missing ingredient in piece has been execution and decision-making at quarterback. Nebraska wanted initially to have a quarterback coach. Didn't get that done, and now in year 2, Nebraska's able to fix that situation, and you've got 20 years of experience in Glenn Thomas. Is he a quarterback whisperer? Is he an elite quarterback coach? I think he's good. I look at the fact that he's done this for 2 decades and splitting time between college and the NFL. You could say, well, he's bounced around a little bit. When he stayed in a spot, he's done pretty well.
I just think it's funny how you said that. Is he an elite quarterback coach? I think he's good.
Well, listen, are you going to look at hires made by Rhule as we go into year 2, even into year 1? And I think you can look at his hires and you can look at his track record. That's my math on this, right? You're not going to just make a move here and say, well, let's go back to Glenn Thomas because we know we've got familiarity. Yeah, that's easy to do, but I think familiarity is important here, don't you? Because you've got Satterfield still putting the offense together. He's just not really done the quarterback coaching thing. Get your quarterback coach in here, get the band back together, and really don't have any hiccups or missteps or gap in, all right, what's my coaching staff doing? Because if they're trying to get things figured out, how's that being communicated, and what does that do delayment-wise for the quarterbacks you've got on hand right now that need to hit the ground running, especially once, Dylan gets back from the Polynesian Bowl? I mean, Nebraska is in an urgent time right now with a loaded Big Ten, a really tough Big Ten, and what separated Nebraska, a lot of things, but one of the big things last year was quarterback play when you're losing by a touchdown or 3 about every other game when you did lose.
Well, let's lay it out really fast here with Glenn Thomas, because it's been well publicized on Twitter. Yeah, he worked with Matt Rhule and Marcus Satterfield at Temple, and it was actually really similar, where Marcus Satterfield was the quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator at Temple. After a year, Glenn Thomas comes in, Satterfield moves to running backs coach and offensive coordinator, while Glenn Thomas comes in and works the quarterback. So there's familiarity. There's been that transition of power before with Glenn Thomas and Marcus Satterfield. That's not unfamiliar to them, and they've worked together there. They worked together at Baylor once Marcus Satterfield came back from his head coaching gig in Tennessee. He came back and he was the tight ends coach, whereas Glenn Thomas was the co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Baylor. So there's been that power, that balance of power between the two in different roles. I think it's going to be very similar at Nebraska. That's not going to be a weird transition. It should be pretty seamless, actually, whenever you look at that. But you look at Glenn Thomas, what do you do without Matt Rhule? Let's go back to his first big-time quarterback coaching gig with the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan was the quarterback, and I think a lot of people would have been praying to have Matt Ryan in his prime as the quarterback that you're coaching in your first gig in the NFL. But he did a good job there, and there was a lot of talent around Matt Ryan early on, at least with Roddy White, Julio Jones, Tony Gonzalez. But what did he do his first year? 4,700 yards passing, almost a 69% completion percentage, 32 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. That was back in 2012, a playoff season where they go to the NFC Championship game for the Atlanta Falcons. 2013, 2014, so the 2 years there, not great as a team. The defense wasn't very good. But Matt Ryan was still fine, 67% completion, 26 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 4,500 yards passing in 2013. And in 2014, 4,600 yards passing, 6 yards away actually from 4,700 yards, 66% completion percentage, 28 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. Again, Matt Ryan was pretty much in his prime during this time, but Glenn Thomas did well there as the quarterback's coach and has that familiarity with Rhule and with Marcus Satterfield. He's a guy who knows what he's doing at the quarterback spot, and he's a guy that's got the familiarity with Matt Rhule, with the coaches that are already on staff. So it checks the two biggest boxes that you need, because finding that continuity, you don't want to be going through a weird transition of power whenever you're trying to not screw up one of the top quarterbacks in the country in Dylan Riley. You have the familiarity. You're not going to have any weird butting of heads, butting of egos here. These guys have worked together before, and he knows what he's doing as a quarterback's coach. So you've gotten the most important aspects knocked out of the way with Glenn Thomas. Does it work out? I think that remains to be seen, but I think based on what we know about Rhule and based on what we know about Glenn Thomas, all signs would indicate that this is a match made in heaven for Nebraska and for Glenn Thomas.
It needs to work out. Can we say that? It needs to work out. As Bob checks in the stream, saw the Steelers bio on him. So damn impressive. Now, listen, you can only do so much as quarterback's coach. The kid or the pro still has to go out and play, and quarterback at Pittsburgh was an issue this past season for Coach Tomlinson. They still got to the playoffs. Here's what I know in some research and a couple of calls made today on Glenn Thomas. One, he's pretty straightforward, has a good working relationship with his quarterbacks, and guys like being coached by him because he's pretty fair, but he's pretty hard. So he'll coach the quarterbacks hard. There's a standard. He has history of good quarterback play. I think what you can expect from quarterback play at Nebraska is be able to do the things that help win you the football game, make a throw, make a decision, scramble, hit the open guy, change the play, do all those things that put you in position for success, manage, and make plays. If you're spectacular, I mean, we know the talent associated with Dylan Raiola. If you feel comfortable with that kid's skill set and ability, yeah, you can put more on, but it's the quarterback coach's job to know what the guy can do and what he's ready for, right? And that's going to be a key part of this. A guy who's coached pros and college players before. I mean, there's a lot of different personalities and quarterback types he's seen. So what he's done is provide a history of good quarterback play when he's been the quarterback coach. And I look at P.J. Walker, a kid at Temple that ended up in the NFL. He makes the decision-making process more fluid for the quarterback. And, the decision-making process, you saw quarterbacks from Nebraska last year try and do too much. Can you dial that back so there's a comfort level? And the thing that he's known for as well, and some folks that have worked with him, he's able to adjust to what you have roster-wise. And you saw Nebraska do that a year ago. All right, Harburg's the guy. What's his strength? It's running the football, some play action, a deep shot, right? Nebraska, when it was clicking, they were able to turn to that and get some points out of some big plays that way. So, listen, adjust to your personnel. He's done pro style. He's also done up-tempo and spread attack. So he's not kind of a one-trick pony with this is my system, this is my offense. It's more of kind of you're at the salad bar there picking out stuff to put on a plate based on what you're hungry for, i.e., what can the quarterback do? I think it's exciting if you're a Nebraska fan to have a talent like Dylan, a talent like Kalen, and the talent that Harburg has. See what type of seasoning you can provide Harburg, because there is a role for him. There's still a competition to be had this spring, and then you have the natural gifted talent that comes along with a 5-star. Well, so this is good, and this is good because I think there's going to be a comfort level, and there's not going to be too big of an ask by this quarterback coach with the young raw talent.
That's, I think, the biggest thing here is
you got to have that.
You mentioned Harburg. This is about Rhule, though. Let's lay that out. And what you have in Rhule, if you're Glenn Thomas, is, to use a baseball analogy, you have a runner on second with no outs. I'm not going to say he's on third. I'm not going to say that. Maybe a runner on first.
You got a guy in scoring position.
But you got a great chance to score a run. Your job is the next up to bat, if that's what Glenn Thomas is in this analogy. Get him over to third base. Hey, if you can work a single and get him in to score, great. But just find a way to get him to third base at least. And if you can get him to third base with no outs or one out, there's a pretty damn good chance that you're going to bring that runner in to score. I mean, that's essentially where you're at with Glenn Thomas in Rhule. You have the natural arm talent that makes Dylan Rhule special. The natural arm talent that not many quarterbacks in college football have. Not many quarterbacks in college football can throw it 70 yards easily like Dylan Rhule did in the Polynesian Bowl this week. You have a special arm talent, and you have a guy that is so much further ahead in his development than so many other quarterbacks because of his pedigree and because of his upbringing, working with his dad, watching NFL film, working with former NFL quarterbacks from the time that he was in middle school. You're further ahead. Make that guy understand the Nebraska offense, make him understand what you want from him, and make sure that he is comfortable. And those are all things that I think Glenn Thomas, based on his history, should be able to provide to Dylan Rhule. Does it work out? On paper, yes, you have to make it work in reality, but all signs point to me to the fact that Glenn Thomas will be able to make this work. And again, time will tell. What we might not know until fall, but it feels like a hire that just makes so much sense, and it gives you the best chance of success.
It's worked before.
Yes.
It worked at Temple when he took over, 10-4, after some tough early years at Baylor, finished 13th in the country, and they were able to get Charlie Brewer up and rolling. We'll talk with Mitch Sherman here in a little bit. Some more comments. We have some discrepancy. We have some arguments in the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, with who's in, who's just logging in to say they were top 5, who's in and out. I can't track that. Shout out to you, Brian, as he is stomping around in 2 feet of snow, feeding his livestock. Brian comments, I find it hilarious that you guys have time to get in 15 minutes early. Brian, thanks for your hard work, man. Thanks for what you're doing, taking care of those livestock out on your ranch. So, and I guess we're a necessary evil for him. The Bluetooth keeps the cold wind out of his ears, which is nice.
I hope it's more than just that.
No, I know, but worst case scenario, we're at least giving the guy something to listen to while he's trying to stay warm. So listen, quarterback is king. Quarterback is your make or break when you look at Penix, right, for Washington. You look at what McCarthy did. Do you have that caliber of a quarterback on your roster at Nebraska? You think so? But you've got a guy, too, and this is a great point Bob brings up. Thomas has coached pretty high-level talent. He's seen a lot of guys. You're going to see a guy like Dylan, a talent like Dylan come in, a talent like Kalen, and then a talent like Harburg. Listen, your job, and I say it 100 times because coaches have really hammered this home, your job's not to screw him up, okay, but enhance the ability. Brian asked the other question we're going to get to. What does this mean about Dana Holgorsen? Is he still in play as an analyst? I think the answer is yes, Brian. I think Dana Holgorsen is still in play. And, yeah, it would make sense for Dana to come to Lincoln as an analyst. If you're LSU, do you maybe reach out to Dana Holgorsen and say, why not come do some work here for us? What does Dana want to do is the question. Dana's got a lot of money.
And I think for now the answer is kick his feet up and relax.
Just
and
take a breath.
See what opportunities arise.
Right.
But
take a breath. That's what Dana wants to do right now. But you'll get a decision from him, and Nebraska's willing to kind of wait for that. Mitch Sherman's on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. A little bit of an audible. Mitch Sherman going to be with us after 5 tonight. So let's check in with Matt Schick, Schick and Nick, ESPNU, Sirius XM. We'll talk some Glenn Thomas with him. We'll talk some Bills Mafia with Matt Schick. Let's talk some ball with Matt Schick of ESPN, Sirius XM, and the Schick and Nick Show at ESPN_Schick. As Schick, you have felt for all of your family and friends and loved ones in this Arctic blast, I'm sure. But do you wish you were in Buffalo yesterday?
Well, that would have been nice. I was actually in Massachusetts yesterday for some high school basketball, and it started to snow squall a little bit for a couple of minutes, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then after 5 minutes, like, this is terrible. Like I felt like a kid. I felt like Maurice Purify, when he came to Nebraska. He's like, well, I thought this grew up from the ground. He'd never seen it before. And I felt like that's how I was. It was like a little kid from L.A. who had just flown into Massachusetts going, what is this white substance here? And why is it sticking to my clothes? But yeah, it would have been great to be in Buffalo to watch that. But it was nice and comfy in the old hotel room.
Well, let's go back a step here. Maurice Purify, I've never heard this before. Maybe I'm too young. Maurice Purify thought the snow came up from the ground?
Hmm?
Yeah, I was actually telling that story this morning on Big Ten Radio because we were talking about the snow and my experience over the weekend. And I remember Bill Callahan's the head coach, Maurice Purify, old wide receiver, played the NFL, goes to the podium, and it was kind of like our first time to really talk to him. He was, I believe, a junior college transfer. And he gets up there, and someone asked him, just kind of an icebreaker or something, just about the snow, or have you ever seen snow before? And his answer was something to the effect of, no, I hadn't seen it, and I haven't seen it before. I thought it just came up from the ground. And we were all kind of waiting for laughter, and he might have smiled, but either he had the driest sense of humor or he just didn't watch a lot of news out in California. I don't know.
I'm going to go dry sense of humor, Schick.
Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Who the heck knows? But I believed him. I believed what he was selling there, that he didn't know. But I think he knows now.
We'll get into Chiefs Bills here in a moment, but Schick, you've had a chance to cover college football for a large part of your career. The news of the day, Glenn Thomas, the new Nebraska quarterbacks coach, and has done time with Rhule before at Temple and at Baylor, and the offenses have been pretty decent under him. What's your reaction to Nebraska pulling the trigger on a quarterback coach?
Well, I wonder, what those conversations were like in recruiting and with the other quarterbacks and with Dylan Raiola. And, it's just interesting. Like, you have that relationship. It clearly wasn't the right time, when he was initially hired. But the fact that you're able to plug him from an NFL franchise is pretty good. I don't think you can have enough assistant coaches that are one-on-one with specific position groups. And I think the fact that, you pluck him and have him work out with the guys and, teach the young guys the ropes, you're almost starting from scratch at that position anyway. It makes a lot of sense. What does it mean in terms of performance? It certainly can't hurt. We've seen some good quarterback coaches in the past at Nebraska and some that left you a little wanting more. But it's a lot of experience that he brings, and I think that can only be good.
Yeah, well, what do you make of the fact that he's a guy that, really when Matt Ryan was in his prime with the Falcons, he's coaching him up. Now he's also got a lot of experience working with both Satterfield and Rhule. Just feels like the perfect hire, a guy with the expertise and the relationship with the guys who are already on staff.
The staff cohesion is always a good thing. I'm always a bigger fan of getting outside the room thoughts that don't coalesce with maybe yours, but just because you work with guys doesn't mean you always agree with them. So it seems to be the stars have aligned for, the fact that, hey, here's the deal. We got this 5-star quarterback, and we need to take this is handle with care. This is the brand new, ceramic ware that you just brought home. Let's not screw this thing up. We need to make sure that it's taken care of, and it seems like they're approaching this the right way.
Matt Schick with us here on Hail Varsity. Of course, Schick and Nick podcast with Hurrdat Sports, Sirius XM, Big Ten Radio, and, of course, ESPN with Matt. Find him on Twitter at ESPN_Schick. Matt, let's fast forward to Nebraska's offense. There's winter conditioning and spring football to sift through and kind of make some determinations there as you get ready for the fall. But we all know Nebraska's quarterback play, putting it nicely, was limited last year. You get Raiola, which is big time. Presumably he'll have the keys, right? And now you have an offense, and you've gone and done work in the portal with Dowdell at running back, a couple of big-bodied wideouts to help maybe mentor a younger but talented wide receiver room. Nebraska's offense was anywhere between 15 points in Big Ten play, I think a total of 17 or 18 points overall last year. You've seen ball and you've seen offenses jump. What's an enormous jump? What's a fair point total jump here for an offense in a year?
Oh, gosh, I would say at least a touchdown a game is fair if you're improving at the quarterback position. If you're improving at a different position, it's probably a little bit less than that. But there's no reason to believe that this can't be not a formidable, but at least I think you have to take baby steps, though. It needs to be, it was egregious this past season in terms of quarterback play. If that can move up to average, somewhat competent, I think that is the next step. Let's face it was a good year, a developmental year, but a good year for that Nebraska offensive line, and you're returning a key part of that. You could have, the fact is, you could have upgrades at quarterback, upgrades at running back, and bring in transfers and ball catchers and all that stuff. But if you're not shored up in the trenches and you're not developing that, then it's all for naught. We've seen that in the past. So a bunch of guys that are coming back, and in a developmental program, you need continuity, and the most important position to have continuity is the offensive line. So I think it can only be a good thing in terms of a jump. You have to expect a jump. How much? I think you kind of set the bar at maybe 5 to 8 points a game and go from there. But defensively, that's where you have the most confidence, right? Mm-hmm. So, even if you jump 4 or 5 points, you're feeling pretty good because this is a program that continues to lose one-possession games. And last I checked, that's about 7 points or less.
It's Matt Schick with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Matt, you're a guy that's been around college football for a while. And I want to get your thoughts as we enter into winter conditioning and begin looking ahead to spring. What are some things that fans can watch for and listen for to see if Nebraska is going to be making that jump in this upcoming season? Obviously, you're not going to know for certain until early September rolls around what this team actually is, but what are some things that you think are usually good signs, things that Husker fans can listen for over the next weeks and months regarding the jump that this team could potentially make?
Well, it's going to be a challenge because Matt Rhule is usually pretty positive and he gives a pretty positive vibe regardless. The fact is, I think you want to hear about the new guys coming in, making an impact. Oh, I like what I've seen so far. Those kind of comments about newcomers and freshmen and guys like Dylan Raiola coming in. Are they catching up to speed? Is the game moving too fast? What can we expect? Those kinds of things that it's just, I would say, Nebraska has won spring football a lot over the past years. And so I think the whole proverbial cliche grain of salt is probably the way to take that in the spring. But, Matt Rhule is he's pretty honest, even though he's fairly positive. So I think you'll be able to read through, kind of where he's at. But his first spring ball where it actually counts, last year he was, on the job for a few months. So this will actually be a pretty telling spring. But I'll be interested to hear just how the new guys are coalescing.
Schick, what do you think of the new Big Ten? Lanning decides to stay as we talk. Harbaugh interviewing, but I think he's probably leading the NFL. That's just my guess. You have a new sheriff in Seattle, and then of course you have Ohio State, still Ohio State. Penn State looks really talented, although they lose a lot, and no divisions, but you're going to have helmet games every weekend, it feels like.
It's going to be a real gauntlet. I think the SEC has used that term. I think the Big Ten could hijack it for at least the foreseeable future. You're going to look at the top 12 to 15 teams and probably see only maybe two of them that aren't in either the Big Ten or the SEC. So split that down the middle. 6 to 7 top 15 teams or top 20 teams in the Big Ten. It's going to be really interesting to watch. But, you think about quarterback play. Dylan Gabriel going to Oregon and Dante Moore transferring in, so he's going to have some experience there. Washington will be interesting just with all the comings and the goings there, and you just saw Will Rogers enter the portal after Kalen DeBoer left, the old Mississippi State transfer. But, you mentioned Penn State. What kind of step can Drew Aller take coming up in this spring? This is a really important, if you had to rank top 5 important springs, Drew Aller would be on the top 5 in the Big Ten for getting this thing going here, especially with a new offensive coordinator and Andy Kolodnecki, who comes over from Kansas. Julian Fleming coming in from Ohio State. Maybe he's the missing ingredient. We'll see. Former number 1 player. But, it's one of those conferences that, especially if you're a program like Nebraska and you're a developmental program, you just need recruit, retain, develop. And, even if it's not this year that you're catching up with the Joneses, just keep it together. Don't ride the waves of wins and losses as much as you are the day-to-day grind. And so that's where this program is at right now. And I think this Big Ten, the Jim Harbaugh thing, like you mentioned, it sounds like he's going to be headed to the NFL. We'll see if the Chargers like the interview enough to put up with him for another 3 or 4 or 5 years, let alone a couple of hours that they spent with him. But that whole contract situation with Harbaugh in Michigan and what he's trying to get in those details printed so that if there is a suspension or if there is some more findings come out that he can't be fired from it. That's where we're at in life, where we're trying to get clauses put in where I can't be fired. That's a pretty good thing. I can get bought out, but I can't be fired. That's where Jim Harbaugh is right now. But when you win a national championship, I suppose to the victors go the spoils of the contracts.
A few more minutes. Matt Schick with us. Next hour, Mitch Sherman on Glenn Thomas. Chris Kelsay with us. We'll get to your stream comments as well on the Glenn Thomas hiring. Nebraska's got their quarterback coach. More with Schick as we talk some further college football, some NFL. It's Hail Varsity on a Tuesday, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Matt Schick with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And I saw it thrown around a decent amount that the national championship game was Washington's welcome to the Big Ten, and the proof that these Pac-12 schools are going to need an adjustment period to fit the style that's needed to go win in the Big Ten. Do you buy that narrative that these 4 schools are going to need an adjustment period over the next couple of years to finally fit into the Big Ten?
Well, what was it, the old Bo Pelini line? I hope they're going to have to adjust to us. I think Scott Frost might have mentioned that as well. Those words kind of come back to haunt a little bit. It's funny, yeah, they might need to adjust. At the same time, there's a bunch of them coming in, right? So there is going to need to be some adjustment on the other end. But this was a Washington team that recruited outside the top 30 in terms of their average recruiting rank over the last 5 years. So it's actually pretty impressive that they made it that far. But I think, a quarterback can overcome some deficiencies, but that was a pretty talented team. And they were, I'd like to say that score might have been closer than the game was closer than the score indicated, although Michigan was in control of that game and didn't ever really feel in doubt. You're a couple of drops away that turn into catches that make it into a little more interesting. I think the linchpin to all of this is Oregon. Oregon, to me, is the kind of program that, because of the way they've recruited, can come in and be the number one team in the conference, for the next 2 or 3 years. I really think they could do that. They've figured out the quarterback position. We'll see how Gabriel does. Ohio State is still trying to figure that part out. But I think it's Oregon. I think it's Ohio State. You have to throw Michigan in there, but what is the staying power of a Michigan that now will be without J.J. McCarthy and perhaps their head coach? We're going to find out. It's one thing to lose your quarterback. It's another to lose your head coach. It's another to lose both in the same offseason, coming off the best year in program history. So, in terms of the other programs, I just Oregon to me is that team that I think if you're in the Big Ten, it's careful here. Well, if they can keep recruiting at this level, they're going to be a team that's going to be a tough out every single week.
Schick, thoughts on Saban, his retirement, reaction to DeBoer being the pick by Greg Byrne?
I'd love to hear the behind-the-scenes conversations of, was Kalen DeBoer number one on the list at all times? By all accounts it was, but it's always that way, right? The person who takes the job is always the number one pick. Just ask Bill Callahan at Nebraska, right? He was always the guy that Nebraska and Steve Peterson wanted. But there's no discounting how good Kalen DeBoer is. I tweeted out last week that when he had won his third national championship at Sioux Falls, a month later, Nick Saban won his first at Alabama. And now here we are about 15 years later, and he's replacing the greatest of all time. It's pretty incredible, the rise for Kalen DeBoer. He's, by all accounts, a good guy, a good coach, great with X's and O's, bringing Ryan Grubb over. Ryan Grubb, who was the offensive coordinator at Washington, turned down the Alabama OC job to stay with DeBoer in Washington, and Washington turns him down for the head coaching job, so he leaves for the OC job at Alabama. And this is where we're at here in the coaching carousel. But Nick Saban set the standard for Alabama. I do wonder if, while it's going to be challenging for DeBoer, if life maybe becomes somewhat more manageable for other coaches because, A, you're not going against the GOAT, and B, that standard is now gone. It was always, hey, look at what Alabama's doing. Why can't we be like that? That dynasty's gone. Winning like that seems to be in the rear view, as evidenced by the fact that Michigan just won the national championship. So we'll see if the playing field is leveled a little bit in college football. But I thought the hire was smart, and I love the fact that other coaches put out recommitment videos like Lanning and Sark. They might have never been offered the job and probably weren't, but they get whispered that they might be mentioned. Time to put out a recommitment video and get a raise. That is pretty smart. That is smart society right there in coaching 101.
Matt, if you go back 12 months, the most intriguing hire of last year's cycle was clearly Coach Prime to Colorado, and I don't think anyone's gotten close to reaching that level of intrigue this offseason. But who gets that title for you? What's the most intriguing head coaching hire we saw this cycle? Is it DeBoer, or are you going somewhere else? Let's say Matt Schick in terms of the most intriguing hire in this coaching carousel.
Well, the one that I'm interested in to see how he does, because he's won at a lot of places, is Curt Cignetti in Indiana, because he has come in with such bravado and telling the world that Purdue and Michigan are terrible, and not so many words, and saying that to the masses there at Indiana. He won at JMU. He's coming in. He's like, I'm a winner. Look at my resume. Google it. You can tell I win. I just can't wait to see how it turns out. What are these post-game news conferences when he loses more games in 1 month than he did in 3 years? I don't know. But that's one where I'm interested in. And Jed Fish, to me, is probably as good a hire as Washington could have done under the circumstances. He's won at a lot of places. He's got NFL experience. Can he hold it together in Washington? Like, if you're a Big Ten fan, you're an outside the Southeast Conference footprint fan. That's a hire that you hope works out, because the last thing you want is Washington catching lightning in a bottle and joining the Big Ten and becoming a 500 team. I don't think they will, and I think Jedd Fisch is probably good enough to do that. But those would be a couple that stand out.
All right, NFL, Schick, the Bills, the Chiefs this weekend. How are you feeling as a lifelong card-carrying member of Bills Mafia? If you could have been, I know you'd have been jumping off the snow mountain onto a table. You weren't able to do that, but you get a chance to take down a nemesis in the postseason.
Well, yeah, this is what we've been waiting for a while. I have been a member of Bills Mafia, but unlike them, I only take my shirt off inside the house and only when the lights are off. So that's where the difference is between us and them. But I will say, my 8-year-old son is a huge Chiefs fan. I don't know where I went wrong. I don't know. Like, I've taught him to fear God, respect your parents, respect your friends, do well, treat others well, and to be a Bills fan. I veered off on the last one big time, so I don't know what that means for the others. But he's a big Patrick Mahomes fan. He likes to talk trash. Thankfully, the game's not at 8 o'clock at night. We'll be able to watch it together. But I was telling one of my other kids the other day, I'm like, I would love to just be able to. And I was telling my brother, who lives in Denver, he's a Bills fan as well, that I would love to take your nephew, my son, 8 years old, to Buffalo to watch that game, just to see the tears kind of roll down his eyes and maybe freeze as they get down the chin there as the Chiefs get beat up a little bit by the Bills. That would be it's tough for me to say as a dad, but there's only one way to get kids off of one bandwagon to another, and that's to win and to beat them up.
So, wish list: sing my child cry.
I'll say Matt Schick, out of context, just said sometimes you need to beat your kids up.
yeah. Don't cut that out. Yeah, that's clearly taken out of context. I never do that to others. You shouldn't do it to me.
So if the Bills are down 2 scores, heaven forbid, and he starts mouthing off, is it go to your room, see ya?
Well, it's that's probably it, or whoa, look, something's happened to the TV signal. Sorry, we can't watch the rest. Type of thing.
We lost the signal.
we control the cable signal here in the house.
I like it. Matt Schick with us, ESPN, Sirius XM, Schick and Nick Show. Get the podcast with Hurrdat Sports at ESPN_Schick. Matt, thanks for a few minutes today.
Always appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
Good to hear from Schick. Good thoughts on Glenn Thomas. Reminder to get buckled up. Seatbelt saves lives. They prevent injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Your comments in the stream next. Chris Kelsay, Mitch Sherman next hour with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, Hail Varsity powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right. And more on the Glenn Thomas hire as Mitch Sherman with us next hour. Chris Kelsay, fantastic player for Nebraska, for the Bills. And we'll check in with him on some NFL thoughts. So stream comments, and big thanks to Matt Schick for joining us here as Bob checks in. As we get to some of your stream comments, Raiola will love this, but the big person going to benefit is Danny Kalen. So glad he stayed and didn't transfer. You have Brett checking in from Oklahoma. Hell must have really frozen over. Michigan wins the title. The Bucks and Baker beat the Eagles. How about Trey Palmer? Woke up ticked off. Oklahoma's become the new Alaska here with all this beautiful scenery and snow. Apologies about the snow down there. Jan's all for the hire. GBR, she's extremely happy about that. Brett is, and there's a lot of comments here, Elijah, about, what's up with Dana? What's the timeline? And I think if Nebraska is going to add to their analyst room in the form of Dana Holgorsen, it's probably February. I think that's the timeline here.
I don't want to put a specific date on it and say February, but Dana Holgorsen, I think, is very comfortable kicking his feet up, and I think we kind of laid it out back in the first segment. Like, it's okay to have an analyst role in your back pocket as you kick your feet up and enjoy an off season. It's stressful to be a head coach. He's getting a couple months off for the first time in damn near a decade. Kick your feet up, relax a little bit. If you want it, there's probably an analyst role for you at Nebraska. Some other jobs. There's an NFL offensive coordinator gig that comes open. I don't think it's going to be any skin off Dana Holgorsen's back to say, Sarah, thanks but no thanks, Nebraska. I got this great NFL gig. I think he's just comfortable kicking his feet up, letting the coaching carousel play out, and understanding he's probably got an analyst role in his back pocket at Nebraska if he wants it. That's kind of the feel I get with Holgorsen.
Or if he wants more as an OC, or if he wants to be a head coach again. I mean, things have been crazy.
And there's just, a lot of things that can happen. Everyone knows it from you take a week of vacation from your job and your state of mind is completely different than when you leave for vacation. How about taking a couple months off after a hkind head coaching gig?
2 spots.
At two different spots at both West Virginia and Houston to, decompress a little bit, let yourself kind of relax and see where the process takes you.
Well, interesting's the word. If Holgorsen were to join Rhule, and comment a little bit further down here. Anonymous says, as long as Thomas turns Harburg into the second coming of Josh Allen, I'll consider him to be a good hire. It's pretty good. Hey, why not? And you've got Lance checking in as well here. Glenn Thomas, a student offensive assistant with Holgorsen at Texas Tech. That staff under Leach. The old Pirate, he knew how to pick him, man. He had a really good coaching tree. And Dion, we'll get out of here with Dion's comment here a little bit further down. There we go. Here, why does it seem like most Big Ten teams were 1,000 times better at hiring coaches than Nebraska pre-Rhule? Comes down to administration, Dion.
Well, and so much, too, of college football's relationships. And Matt Rhule has shown himself to be a person that does not burn bridges, keeps relationships open, and has a wide network of friends.
No, he has got those connections. Brandon, Nebraska upgrades at the OC position. It automatically becomes number one. Well, you've got another voice in mind that's done the OC work on staff now. Hour 2 coming up. Hail Varsity powered by Cornhead Lager.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, All-American and All-Big 12 selection, 10-year vet with the Buffalo Bills. We love talking some NFL and Husker football as we say hi to Chris Kelsay with us here on Hail Varsity. Chris, how's the week been for you? Thanks for the time.
Well, other than cold, it's been great. Kids are out of school still. Two of them anyway. My oldest goes to Scott. They had school today, but the younger two, my freshman and 7th grader, are out. So hopefully tomorrow we're able to get them back in school and get them learning again because it's kind of been a long weekend.
I was going to say, you and a lot of parents were all nodding. Yes, get them back into class and out of the living room as much as you love them. So what's the craziest weather game you participated in Buffalo?
We've had a few. I remember it would have been the first year the Giants won the Super Bowl. We played them in Buffalo, week 17, last game of the regular season. And it was cold, but it poured right at the end of the first half and just soaked us. And then when we came out after halftime, the temperature dropped. I don't know what exactly, but it felt like 20 degrees, and so it was just super cold. But you know what? I was fortunate. We played in some snow, nothing like what they've experienced in recent years. The coldest game I ever played in my life by far was my senior year in high school in the state semifinals against David City Aquinas in David City. I don't remember what it was, clearly well below zero, but I'll always remember that game, just how brutally cold it was.
Did you win?
We did not. We got beat, and David City went on to win the state championship. Much like my junior year, we played played Milford in the state semis, and they went on to beat Battle Creek in the state championship. So I had 2 years in a row there, junior, senior year, where we fell short in the semis.
Does the weather faze you, or are you able to go to a deep, dark place and just ball?
Yeah, I think adrenaline kicks in when you're on the field. You don't notice it nearly as much as when you come off and you're standing or sitting on the sideline waiting for your offense to do their thing to get you back out there. I joke all the time, out on the field, you can play at anything. I don't care if it's hot, cold, whatever the temperature may be. You don't really notice it when you're out there in the action, but when you're standing on the sidelines waiting to get back out there is when it affects you the most.
Well, tell me then, a lot of people have looked at the playoffs this weekend and said that was football weather right there. Tell me, what is the best weather for football? Maybe it's from a fan perspective, from a player perspective, you sitting on your couch. What screams football weather to you?
You get home field advantage in the playoffs. That's the purpose of wanting to win the division, get a home playoff game. Unfortunately for us, it was against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was just right down the road, a couple hours away, playing in the similar elements. But if it was to be like a Miami Dolphins or a Southern team or a Dome team that comes to Buffalo to play in those type of conditions, obviously it's a huge advantage for Buffalo. Myself personally, I like those games that are mid-70s, around 80 degrees, where you don't have it one way or another. It's just perfect football weather, and the elements just don't affect you. I like a clean game, especially this time of year. You hate to have a team that might be limited in what they can do offensively or defensively because of the conditions. I think this time of year is when you want to see the best product from both teams on the field, and the best team wins. So, I'd say anything other than too cold and too hot, somewhere right there in between, perfect football weather.
So in your time in Buffalo, 10 years, 2003 to 2012, did you ever have a chance to bump into Bill's Mafia pre-kickoff and say what's up at a tailgate, or at least after a ball game, a celebration? I mean, some of the footage was incredible with the giant snow mountain, folks trudging through 18 feet of snow, hip deep, it felt like, to get to their seats. So the fans were hardy. Of course, Buffalo fans always, some Pittsburgh fans, to your point, made the trip as well. But any experience with the Mafia firsthand in a tailgate setting?
Yeah, usually after a game, and I've been to quite a few games since retiring, so more so then than back when I was playing. But, I mean, living in Buffalo for as long as we did, you see them around town. Buffalo is really a close-knit, small community, very similar to Nebraska, really. They know their players, so if you go out to dinner or if you're out at the grocery store or around town, shopping, whatever it may be, they know who you are, and it is truly a family atmosphere. But, yeah, like you said, they travel far and wide. I took my son, my 13-year-old, down to Miami 2 weekends ago to watch the Bills beat the Dolphins for the AFC East Championship, and the amount of fans down there was just mind-boggling. I bet the stadium was 50-50 as far as Dolphins and Bills fans. But, yeah, they come in regardless of the weather, regardless of the conditions, they come in full force, and I'm sure after yesterday there was a lot of tables being broke, and Bill's Mafia were loud and proud, that's for sure.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Have you sent your son face first through a table yet?
Not yet. I don't know if I will either, man. Some of the videos that you see, and some of the injuries that you've seen in some of those wild videos is just mind-boggling to me. But they're a very passionate group of fans, and I've been fortunate. I only played for 3 teams: high school, college, and professionally, and I've been fortunate to have some of the greatest fans all 3 phases of my career.
How you feeling against KC, the matchup this weekend?
I like the matchup. We got a couple guys banged up yesterday, which I think we'll get a couple back as well. It's good to have Hyde and Poyer defensively on the back end. I think when they're both healthy and playing together, two of the better safeties in the league. I'd say one of the best tandems there are. But I think we'll get Gabe Davis back this week. You know, he sustained an injury early in the Miami game 2 weeks ago. Yesterday at one point towards the end of the game, I think we had all backup linebackers in the game when Leonard went down. And, man, we just had the injury bug early in the year, losing Milano and Tre'Davious White and some of our guys defensively. We've got a few back. But, you know, we beat them once in the regular season. But, you know, if you watch that Kansas City game the other day, they're starting to roll. That defense has really carried it this season, which is crazy to say when you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsay on offense. You know, his receivers hasn't helped him much this year with all the drops they have, but they're still a very dynamic offense, and their defense will get after it. So it's going to be a good game. I'm looking forward to watching it. I like our chances. I really do. I think Josh Allen, you know, just the dual threat he is, you see him bust a, whatever it was, 51, 53-yard run yesterday. He can hit you with that at any time. But, again, we're going to have to protect him. I'm going to have to keep him clean, and then our other guys are going to have to step up, catch the ball, run the ball, and then be physical, both sides of the line of scrimmage, offensively and defensively in the line.
You know, it always comes down to turnovers. Any level, NFL, it's at a premium, and it's risk-reward, quite frankly, as great as both quarterbacks are. That's been an Achilles heel when each team has lost. And do you like how Allen's taken care of the football here recently?
It's one of those deals you have to take the bad with the good, you know, because you wouldn't be in this position if you didn't have Josh Allen. Even down in Miami, like I keep referencing this game because it was such a back and forth game, and it really shouldn't have been close. But in the first half alone, I think we had 4 trips to the red zone, including that into the first half drive where we're down the red zone, threw the ball in the field of play instead of throwing the end zone. Time runs out without any timeouts to kick the ball. But we had 4 trips in the red zone, had 2 interceptions, and came away with no points. So, yeah, I mean, you look at it, like you said, statistically, you look at a box score, you look at turnovers, you look at third down percentages, and usually is the tail of the tape. They'll tell you who won the game. But with Josh Allen, he's able to make up for a lot of those turnovers that he's had throughout the year. It seems to be in the red zone a lot of times. I don't know if it's just a coincidence or if he takes a few more chances down there. But, again, sometimes you just got to grin and bear it, just hoping that he gets another chance. And if he can keep it close and it's a one-score game at the end of the fourth quarter and we can have the ball in our hands, I like our chances with Josh Allen behind center.
Chris Kelsay's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, talking Buffalo Bills. Chris, proud Husker, and you keep an eye on the Big Red. What do you think? What's your reaction with the Dylan Raiola hype and just kind of the momentum this team has in the offseason? They made strides. Defense looked great last year. They got a quarterbacks coach today, part of Rhule's staff with Glenn Thomas, and made some key portal acquisitions, too, on the offense from a skills standpoint. Are you excited about 2024?
Man, I think all of us are. They've done a really good job of targeting players in the transfer portal, recruiting our own players. You know, Dylan was a huge get. I think, you know, even since he committed originally to Georgia, I think there was still just kind of that feeling in the back of our minds that he'd switch and that we'd end up getting him, and that's obviously the case now. So I think it's very well to do, and I think that we just need to keep this momentum going. Ultimately, it depends on what they do when they get here, right, how we can develop them and what kind of product we can put on the field. But I absolutely love what Coach Rhule is doing. Tony White, I talked to Adam Carricker here a few weeks ago. Actually, it was still in the season. I think it was before we were going up to Wisconsin, but there was a scuttlebutt that he was going to leave, and he asked me, what do we need to do to keep Tony White? And I said, whatever it takes, because his defense and what he's done with that group of guys that we had on the field this year was nothing short of amazing. And to give him another year with that system, with our kids, and with the guys, the young men that are coming in, I'm super excited. I haven't been this excited about our defense in a long, long time. But, yeah, there's a lot of momentum, like you said. There's a lot of hype around Dylan and some of the guys that they've gotten, and I just hope that continues. And then ultimately, we go out and just compete our rear ends off next year and try to get in the hunt.
Chris,
rosters can completely change now with the whole NIL, transfer portal, all that. It's not like it used to be where it takes some time to get the right pieces in place. You can do it. It seems like just overnight anymore.
It seems like, not only is there a fit, but there's a really good plan. So even some of the young kids, Chris, got in and made pretty big impacts. I look at those 3 freshman defensive linemen, all really had some key moments last season. It worked out so far, and there's a ceiling they can reach.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's hats off to Coach Rhule and his staff and just how they operate, man. They're doing things the right way. I've been able to go to a few of their practices this year and to watch how he runs practice. It's a very efficient practice, but yet he's not afraid to stop things and coach. He doesn't overlook the little things, and that's the thing that impressed me the most is he'll take 2 or 3 minutes and address the little things so they don't become big things. And it doesn't matter who he's coaching. It doesn't matter if it's one of your starters or if it's a backup or somebody on the show team. So, I just think that I know myself and a lot of the other former players that have a chance to be around the program and see some of these guys and to check out practices. I've heard nothing but great things, and I look forward to the future here with Coach Rhule.
It's Chris Kelsay with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Chris, the topic of the week, aside from Glenn Thomas being announced, has been the newcomers, the early enrollees arriving on campus. You're a guy, if I remember correctly, not an early enrollee. You redshirt your freshman year, true freshman year, I should say. Then your second year on campus is whenever you finally start getting some playing time. Tell me, what do you think the extra impact of being able to show up 5 or 6 months before your mates would give you, and tell me about that development that you saw your own first 12 months on campus?
Yeah, and I was a little bit unique because I had a brother, who's going to be a senior. So as soon as my senior year in high school wound down, I packed up and I moved to Lincoln and moved right in with my brother and his roommate at the time, Steve Raymond. Lived with them, worked out with them, and really taught those guys, the upperclassmen taught me the ropes. They welcomed me with open arms, and at that point during the summer and into workouts back then, coaches weren't around. It was all player led, and I learned a lot. I didn't take my red shirt until after my 5th or 6th game, my true freshman year. And then by that time, rules are a little different with red shirts now. But if I would have got thrown in, somebody gets banged up and play for a few snaps, I'd lose an entire year of eligibility. So I went to Coach Solich and asked for my red shirt, and they gave it to me, obviously. And that's the best thing for me. You hate it because my brother played as a true freshman, and back then, you want to come in and play right away. And that was a goal of mine. But obviously, hindsight being 20/20, it's the best thing that happened to me in my entire career, probably, is having that extra year to develop. Not just on the football field and in the weight room, but also in the classroom too. Got my degree, and that extra year helped out a ton. But yeah, I learned a ton from my brother and those other seniors and sophomores and juniors that we hung around with, worked out with, and kind of learned it from the best at the time. So I was quite a bit ahead of my class when they got there, but they acclimated themselves pretty quickly too. But it did give me a foot up. I think just having that connection with my brother there and knowing a lot of those guys from going up and watching them play the previous 3 years. So it was a feather in my hat for sure.
Chris, you take care. Best of luck to Buffalo, and thanks for a few minutes.
No, anytime. I appreciate you guys.
Good to hear from Chris Kelsay. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic next on Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
It's that time.
Psst. Hey, Mitch. Mitchie. We're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. And instead of Mitch releasing the fury, Mitch released the news today about Glenn Thomas, Nebraska quarterbacks coach. Mitch, how we doing? Thanks for a few minutes. And surprised by the news today, or did you think this was just a matter of time?
Yeah, I'm well, Schmitty. Thanks. Good to talk to you guys. Not surprised in the sense that the Pittsburgh Steelers season ended yesterday, and Matt Rhule clearly was waiting on that move, on that point to occur, us to get to this point where the Steelers were no longer playing and Glenn Thomas was available to hire. We've talked about him in the past, and I knew he was a candidate. Clearly Nebraska's been in conversations with Dana Holgorsen too, and if that's going to happen, now there would be an analyst job that would be open for him. But it does appear that otherwise Nebraska's staff for next season, the full-time on-field coaching staff, is set with the addition of Thomas and the shift of Marcus Satterfield as still offensive coordinator and the play caller. That's important to note. But he will coach tight ends, and Josh Martin, who coached the tight ends last year, on short notice, on quick notice, after Bob Wager resigned at the end of July, Martin will move back to his role that he filled a year ago as an offensive analyst.
So, Mitch, let's get a little backdrop on Glenn Thomas, his fit with the offense, with Sat, with Rhule, the vision, and most importantly, what have you gleaned with Thomas's track record working with quarterbacks? What can Nebraska fans expect from his expertise, his experience?
Right. Well, we know about his time with the Atlanta Falcons, which was his first stint in the NFL, and how he was just an offensive assistant, which is like an analyst in college, and then was promoted to the quarterbacks coach and coached Matt Ryan for 3 years, and there were 3 successful years. He threw for, I believe, 4,000 yards and a lot of touchdowns in each one of those seasons. So that's a feather in Thomas's cap, and he went from there to working with Matt Rhule at Temple in 2015 and 2016, which were Rhule's final 2 seasons and most successful 2 seasons at Temple. And they had P.J. Walker, who was a quarterback that Rhule started as a freshman and used all through Walker's career, collegiate career, and then Walker ended up playing for Rhule in the NFL. Thomas was a quarterbacks coach. 1 year he was offensive coordinator. The next year, and then much of the staff went to Baylor. Rhule, Thomas, and Satterfield included. So they were there together for 3 seasons. Thomas coached quarterbacks. He was co-offensive coordinator for all or some of that time, and then moved on to UNLV, Arizona State, and to the Steelers, which brings us to now with this reunion between the 3 of them. And I think the important thing to know is that it's not just Rhule and Thomas who have worked together. It's Satterfield too. And that should help Nebraska in this transition. And really, there's no time to waste because you have a pair of true freshman quarterbacks, including Dylan Raiola, who is starting school next Monday in Lincoln, and Glenn Thomas will be there to be his coach, to be his position coach, and the main voice inside the program that Dylan Raiola, who's, of course, billed as a prodigy, he's the 5-star quarterback who's in line to start as a true freshman. This is the guy that he's going to listen to and work with every day.
Yeah, we've had some questions in our stream chat, Mitch, about what exactly Thomas's role is actually going to be. Do you have any sort of sense of what that's going to be? Does he have a role in calling the offense, game planning the offense, passing game, or is he specifically just going to be looking at the quarterbacks, essentially, hey, don't mess up Dylan Raiola? Well, what is his day-to-day life going to be? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think the day-to-day life is quarterbacks coach. Now, whether they give him a title, if they give him a passing game coordinator title to, in order to, fit with whatever salary he receives, that's outside of what I know right now. So we'll wait until Nebraska, at least as of the last I had checked this afternoon. This is yet to be announced by the school, but that's coming soon, and maybe that'll provide some clarity on a title. But when it comes down to it, whether there's a title in addition to quarterbacks coach, his primary responsibility, yes, is to coach those guys, and not just Dylan Raiola, because we know from watching Nebraska that it takes more than one quarterback to win at Nebraska and throughout college football and in the Big Ten. And so his job will be to get Dylan ready to go, presumably as the starter, but we'll see what spring ball holds. And then also to work with Danny Kaelin, to work with Heinrich Harburg, and any others who are in that room. There's some walk-ons there now, but
perhaps Nebraska's going to leave the door open for whoever else might be added to that room, and Thomas will have some say in that after they see all of the results of spring practice.
Mitch Sherman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Mitch breaking the news earlier today about 11:40 with The Athletic. Glenn Thomas, Nebraska new quarterbacks coach, and that is what Rhule originally wanted, Mitch, and they made do last year. And quarterback, really, you can look at it two ways. One, that guys that didn't see a lot of time ended up coming in, and Nebraska was on the cusp of bowl eligibility or beyond. The other side of that coin is that the 25 turnovers attributed to quarterbacks. So on one hand, I like Nebraska trying to make do with what the strengths of that quarterback room were. The other side of it is you got to be better at protecting the football. Based on what you've looked at with his quarterback history, have you seen improvement when Thomas has gotten a hold of some quarterbacks and had a chance to coach some guys up?
Yeah, I haven't dug too deep into it yet, but at the college level, yes. And it's hard to know sometimes with the NFL because there's so many coaches on a staff. And, this year with the Steelers, he was, again, an offensive assistant, which is similar to his role when he started with the Falcons. So, you can look at the Steelers this year, and they had a very Nebraska-like, at least recent Nebraska-like season with the quarterbacks in Pittsburgh this year. Injuries and various things happened that caused the Steelers to have to play three quarterbacks. And Thomas was not the guy who was directly responsible for them, but that doesn't mean that he didn't have an impact. I don't know. I look forward to getting the opportunity to talk to him when he's on the ground in Lincoln and their period of recruiting that extends into the very end of January is over, and we get to chat about that exact thing, about how he's worked to improve quarterbacks within his system, because there's going to be improvement needed for all of these guys. You can come in as a 5-star and throw the ball 70 yards in the air and win the long pass competition at the Polynesian Bowl like we've seen with Raiola this week, and have all the tools, all the physical tools that you need, but he's going to have to grow. And of course, they're going to want him to grow. I mean, he's coming in as a true freshman, and there's going to be a lot likely asked of him. So the person coaching that position is hugely important for his development. And Dylan, of course, has received a lot of training and has developed a lot outside of his coaches at the high school level. And I think he'll still continue to seek some training and do things to refine his game. But the main guy now for him, in addition to Rhule and in addition to Satterfield as the OC, it's going to be Glenn Thomas. He'll work with him most closely and be in position meetings and in film reviews with him. So that's we have more to learn coming down over the next several weeks and months about the history that Thomas has had with quarterbacks and exactly how they've progressed under his eye.
What kind of jump, Mitch, can the offense make when, with Rhule being the head man? You've got Sat, and then you have Glenn Thomas now. What can that 1-2 punch do? Sat's calling the offense. Glenn's got to get the quarterback to pull the trigger.
Yeah, well, first of all, the improvement that the offense is going to make is going to mostly involve the personnel. And Nebraska has already upgraded the personnel at the quarterback spot with the two freshmen that it's added through recruiting. And also, it's upgraded the offense with the work that it's done in the portal to provide weapons for those quarterbacks to distribute the ball to. And I'm thinking primarily about Isaiah Nair from Texas and about Jamal Banks from Wake Forest, and two senior wide receivers who both have a history of catching the ball and putting up numbers. That could be your wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, or they could work into the offense in a different way where Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd and Alex Bullock and Jaden Doss and Demetrius Bell and others are also featured. And I think it'll be a combination of some of that. Those guys don't walk in and immediately get the top positions, but their experience is valuable, and that will go a long way. Also, the signing of Dante Dowdell as a transfer from Oregon. He's a younger guy. I don't think he has the immediate impact necessarily as the two senior wide receivers, but there's a lot of pieces that Nebraska's added. And on top of that, maybe the the least important, but still an important thing in all of that is how this thing shakes out with the coaches. And now Marcus Satterfield, he had a lot on his plate in 2023. And I think if Matt Rhule had any idea at all that 23 was going to go the way that it did with Jeff Sims out of the gate, and then having to turn to the quarterbacks that he did and the lack of experience that they had, they may have done things differently in shaping the staff. But now they've got Satterfield in a spot where he can focus on the tight ends and spend a huge amount of his time game planning and strategizing. And then Thomas, of course, can focus just on the one position, which is the most important position on the field.
Mitch, last thought here, 30 seconds. With Nebraska's on-field staff likely being done for the year, which position coach do you think has the most important next 9 months getting his group ready in terms of the success it could lead to next football season in 2024?
I mean, the easy answer is to say Thomas. Like I just got done saying, it's such an important position, and we all know that, and we all know that Nebraska will go in large part how its quarterbacks go. But, I'll look at Donnie Raiola, too, and they've got a lot of work to do to get this offensive line to gel together, probably a new right guard and Marcus Mazuka, the transfer from Florida, and then fitting all the pieces back together to make sure that the Huskers are healthy up front. So the answer is Thomas, but you can never overlook the importance of what they're going to do on the offensive line.
10 seconds. Just be patient for Dana Holgorsen. There's a lot of questions about Dana.
Yeah, he could go a number of places. The coaching carousel is still spinning, and it's been revved up in the last week or two with moves from big schools. So, and maybe the NFL is a possibility in his future, but it's not out of the question that Nebraska could still end up with him on staff in a non-coaching role.
Mitch, you take care. Thanks for making time today, bud.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good stuff from Mitch Sherman, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Podcast there for you, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Reminder about your friends at Dyer Law when we talk personal injury. If you've been in a personal injury accident, you can count on the team at Dyer Law with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call Dyer Law today at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your personal injury claim. That's dyer.law, 402-393-7529. So we've hit the big story today. That is Glenn Thomas. A lot of comments in the stream and discussing Nebraska's coaching staff in reference to the Big Ten. And you've got a lot of transition. You got a lot of turnover, especially this coaching cycle, not only with staffs, but some big names. Nick Saban, of course, retiring. Jim Harbaugh sounds like he's off to the NFL. Kalen DeBoer departs Washington. And what's the seam? What's the window like for Rhule and company in year 2 of the Big Ten? You get a 5-star quarterback. You've got a stud defensive coordinator. You've got a ton returning on the defensive side of the football. You've got a ton of offensive linemen returning, plus some of those kids that developed. You've gone portaling, and it looks great on paper. Now can you bring it all together, and can you go win some close ball games with a really tough but fun schedule, especially the last 7 in 2024. Coaching staffs are so key, man, and that's where you get mismatched. Player-wise, right, for years, Nebraska's been at the level or better recruiting. When you look at the Wisconsins, the Minnesotas, the Iowas, the Old West, the Northwesterns of the world, the Purdues, you didn't have success post-Bo. Really, you didn't. Right now, you're recruiting at a higher level. Are you developing at a as good or better level? That's, to me, what is going to be the differentiator. Can you pair that high-level talent you do bring in, i.e. 5-star quarterback, and can you develop that, and then can those guys touch the ceiling? Can you get great offensive line play? What I'm excited about, and just some numbers we looked at with Glenn Thomas in the good years, right, after those tough first years at Temple and at Baylor, Thomas was able to have a balanced attack, but it was kind of a pro-style attack on offense, where those Baylor and Temple teams would run for about 170 yards, right? I think Rhule wants to go for 2 bills at a minimum and be that physical fourth quarter team. Don't kid yourself. They're going to put the ball in the air with Dylan Raiola or use those talents. They're not going to have the running quarterback situation, maybe a scramble, maybe a play extension, but it's not going to be Harburg. Maybe there'll be some Harburg in the red zone with the old Tim Tebow package, but you get what I'm saying with the offensive style. It's going to be a pocket passing system. So what do you get here? Do you get 270 yards tossing the football? Do you get 170, 200 on the ground and knock your turnovers down by 2/3? That equals a chance to be in that Big Ten race in November. But time will tell. We're way ahead of here. Cart before the horse.
Well, I'm not of the.
This is a big piece, though.
I'm not of the opinion that the addition of Glenn Thomas and Dylan Raiola changes up your offensive scheme, at least in year one, to the point where you're airing it out, 35, 40
It better
times.
change your success level, though.
Better change your success level, but listen to what Matt Rhule said about modeling his offense after the 49ers and other teams in the NFL. The 49ers aren't going back there and dropping back 40 45 times with Brock Purdy. They're going under center. They have a really, really complex, multiple under center rushing attack that opens up deep down the field shots for Brock Purdy, that Brock Purdy can read the defense pre-snap, understand that the defense has to respect the run whenever you drop back into that play action. And then whenever you look downfield, you're not going to be confused. You're not going to be surprised by what you see. That's what the play action allows you to do. So you're able to make quicker, more decisive reads, easier reads, if you will, from the quarterback spot. And they're not sitting back there and sitting shotgun and taking 3 and 5 step drops and airing it out 40-plus times. It's not going to look like what the Cowboys look like against the Packers with Dak Prescott throwing the ball 60 times. It's not going to look like that. I think you're going to have a little more trust in your quarterback. It's really going to make a difference whenever Nebraska finds themselves down by 7 points or 10 points in a ball game, 14 points in a ball game, that you have a guy that you can rely upon. But I still think, at least in year one, it makes a hell of a lot more sense to have the focus of your offense be running the football. It's like C.J. Stroud's the exception in the NFL, because usually in the NFL, the running back in the running game is a rookie quarterback's best friend. I think the same. It's every
quarterback's best friend, the old reliable tight end, right? But you're not wrong.
Especially so with a true freshman quarterback coming in. You know what? You want to rely on your rushing attack. You want Dylan Raiola to be picking up 3rd and 3, not 3rd and 15, and you do that with a solid rushing attack. And the things you laid out, like a good tight end helps that as well, because now the defense has to respect that. Is he going up to second level to go block a linebacker, or is he going second level to go catch a pass? You don't really know. So these are all the things that I think can assist Dylan Raiola, and I think that's why it makes a lot more sense for this offense to look maybe more similar to 2023 than people might expect. I think you're going to have a lot of under center and a lot of play action whenever Dylan Raiola is throwing the football.
Pretty cool with what's going on in Hawaii with Dylan Raiola, Carter Nelson, both on hand. Tamua is there, high-level offensive line.
Well, we mentioned it yesterday. Imagine Dylan Raiola, play action, hits the back foot in his drop, and then just launches it 70 yards down the field on the money. Be nice to have.
Yeah, Jalen Lloyd's running wide open with 18 yards of separation because he burned a safety. 18 might be a bit much, but him and Malachi. And no, man, I mean, are you with me where let's just fast forward, not only because of the weather, but let's just get to spring ball? Pretty excited about it, pretty intrigued. And I wish fall was here already. I'm already missing college football. I love the NFL. I've enjoyed the NFL action. That's been incredible. This playoff run, I know there's been blowouts, but there's been some good ball games. It's been marvelous.
I see you've reached the point I've reached this week where you look at the schedule and go, oh, there's only 6 football games left all year. Mm-hmm. One of them's the Super Bowl. It's great. The AFC title game, the NFC title game, NFL divisional weekends, one of my favorite weekends all year long. But yeah, you do sit there and you just go, you're staring down the barrel of a gun of another long offseason. You go, oh, man.
Is it spring yet? The old countdown post-spring to kickoff is going to be pretty incredible. We'll get you through it, of course. Husker Hoops on our mind. We'll get you geared up for Nebraska Rutgers. They need to bounce back. They've done it all year. Can they do it on the road in Big Ten fashion? We'll spend time on that tomorrow. And we'll get some more of your comments here in the stream. But You look at some of the upgrades Nebraska's made between the OC / quarterback coach combination. And here's what I believe, too. I believe that, you've got the title with Sat, but you're going to have input not only from your head coach because he's hands-on, but you're going to have input and thoughts and, quite honestly, laying out what the guys can do. First and foremost, what can the quarterback do? What can the O-line do if you're Donnie? What's the running game look like? All that will be voiced, and then here's the game plan. Let's proceed accordingly if you're Sat. So a lot of cooks, but cooks know their roles, and let's see if Nebraska can make a jump offensively.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Thanks to Chris Kelsay. Thanks to Matt Schick of ESPN. Big thanks to Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Babbers tomorrow. Evan Bland tomorrow. See what else we have news-wise. But get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Download the show or find us on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. And also the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Shameless plug for Mitch and Dolman and Elijah. The Average Joe Sports Show pod also dropping. So check that out as well. About an hour or so from Mitch on that. So good stuff with him. So bowling tonight, yes?
Yes, sir.
So are you going to just crush a bowling alley cheeseburger? Are you going chili dog? Or are you just going pitcher of beer? How are you handling tonight? I got invited to dinner with my family, which is code for, hey, do you want to go to dinner? I.e., do you want to pay for dinner? I'm like, no, I'm going home. I will air fry something and go that way.
We'll see. I need to get some ingredients from the store. Obviously, we recorded the Average Joe show a little bit earlier today following the Glenn Thomas news. It's usually in my workout window. Therefore, I'm going to need to work out after bowling tonight.
Dude.
Yeah.
How do you... No.
We're going to figure that out. And the problem being...
I'd say it's at 6:30, let's get to the gym tomorrow morning. Or is that too much to ask post-bowling?
I'd much rather go whenever the gym is, following January 1st. The gym is usually pretty full. I'd much rather go later at night whenever it's more likely to be empty as opposed to in the morning whenever it's going to be full. And then my
Are you
workout
afraid to
takes
be
twice
gawked
as long.
at?
No, it takes twice as long to go work out in a full gym because, somebody's using the cable machine. Now I got to wait for the cable machine. I'm going to do another lift, and then somebody else take the cable machine. So now I got to hit, cardio or something stupid.
How do you get to bed, though, after you work out? That's problematic. You work out after 8. Good luck trying to fall asleep.
I'm the opposite.
Okay.
I fall asleep better after a good workout, especially if you get home, you get a little snack and you fall.
So you go
workout.
Rocky 4 with the workout where you're totally spent afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
I go hard in there. So that's the problem, though, is you want to have a whole pitcher of beer at bowling league. Have you ever tried working out after drinking a whole pitcher of beer?
Yes.
You're not going to have a good time.
There was when we first moved back to town, we lived in an apartment, actually, when we first got married. We were in a really cool apartment that was just across the street from a bar and could go meet some mates and have a few drinks. And then I had the keyless entry, 24-hour gym to myself. So you'd go somehow crawl onto the treadmill after.
Ugh.
I made it happen somehow. Sweated all of the naughtiness out of me.
That sounds like the one-way ticket to feeling awful for the next 3 hours.
Actually, you wake up. The best thing, though, if you've been out too late, say you went to a party in Tempe or Scottsdale. The best thing, though, is when you get on the treadmill or you start working out early in the morning after pulling a bender.
Yes, that is. I cannot deny that. That works.
Allegedly.
I can't imagine going directly after drinking a pitcher of beer. So because of that, I'm going to avoid the chili dogs, the nacho cheese dogs, the burgers tonight. And I think I'm just
That's what you do at the bowling alley.
Scrounge together some stuff in my fridge.
Good on you. Love it. Appreciate you all checking us out on the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube. Subscribe, tell a buddy. And thanks for the commentary and checking in on the stream. Roll call starting 5 again tomorrow. And we'll be back at 4 on Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Can also find and give the show a follow at HVarsity Radio. Take care, stay warm. Talk tomorrow.